I bought these 5 broken Nintendo Switches, all from viewers, to see if I could fix them. One of them came with a challenge. I bought this Nintendo Switch from a viewer named Sean, whose son Nash challenged me to see if I could fix it. So let's just get right into this one. Nash, challenge accepted. So they said the battery went dead and then it never charged again. They took it to get it fixed. They said they replaced the power source, whatever the power source is, and it still doesn't work. I'm assuming they replaced the battery. So what I want to do is see if it's charging at all. We have 5.1 volts, 0 amps. So this is taking absolutely no charge. So let's get this thing taken apart and start doing some tests. Nintendo Switches use tri-wings to remove the back covers. So I'll be using my iFixit ProTech toolkit. So we need to get out the driver, and then we're going to go with a Y00. I believe that's the size. It's been a while since I've done any Nintendo Switch repairs, and that size works good. Then we got a Phillips 00 to remove this screw here, and this one here. And then these ones on the side as well. These ones you have to push in pretty hard or else they can be easy to strip. So that one came out pretty good though. One on the top and one under here. Now we can get the back cover off and get to the metal shield under it. Somebody didn't install this SD card correctly. This part right here is kind of flipped up. It's not really loose, but I have to see if they damage that when we get this off. These are easy to damage. And let's see. No damage. Good. Okay, let's see what this repair shop replaced under here. Okay, so they removed this for sure. Some of this foam has been torn off. But oh, looks like this guy's been replaced. It almost looks like maybe it's missing some pieces down there. So I'll have to look on another board to make sure. We need to get this under a microscope too and just look at this and see if they did a good job replacing it. I feel like some of the solder down here does not look great, so that could be the source of our problem right there. Let's check with the multimeter and see how much voltage is in our battery. And we have 0 volts. So the battery is completely dead. Okay, so at this point, as far as I can tell, the repair shop replaced this chip. I can't see anything else they replaced, but once we get this board out, then we can see if there's anything else. So we do need to remove this heat pipe and heatsink, the fan, the card reader, all these little connectors, and then all the screws on the board, and then we can pull it out and have a look at it. And they definitely didn't install the perfect amount of thermal paste. In fact, I'm not sure they installed any at all. This might be the thermal paste from the factory. And we're either missing a screw or I took that out and didn't remember. It really could be either at this point. I think this board can just come out now. Yep. Okay, let's have a look at the other side. Yeah, I see some flux on this. So it looks like they replaced the USB-C port, the video chip, and the battery charge chip over here. So let's get this thing under a microscope and inspect their work. And we can see that the M92 chip is on here crooked. As far as I can tell, that's not affecting anything, but we may need to remove that just to test or even just heat it up and get it scooted over where it needs to be. This side is just way lower than it needs to be, and you can see how this side is also lower. So the whole thing is kind of twisted. But let's test and see if we have any shorts on this chip. And the way you test that is right on this capacitor right here. This side should make a beep because this side is connected directly to ground. and it does. This side should not make a beep because this side is connected to the chip and this part of the chip should not be grounded, and it is grounded. So we could have a faulty chip, or we could actually, we need to test the other capacitors around here. That side is grounded. Oh, that side's not. Okay. If I remember right when I'm working on switches, if this capacitor is shorted, that's not necessarily a problem. A lot of times that can be fixed. If this one is shorted, that can be pretty difficult to fix and sometimes impossible. Also, while we're down here, let's look at this chip. This is another chip that has to do with the battery management. And these capacitors are not shorted. That's good news. Okay, well, let's flip it over and have a look at the video chip. I can't tell for sure if this has been replaced. There's definitely a lot of flux on it, but since they did replace the port, that could have just dripped down from that, possibly. And this guy right here a lot of times likes to short out. Oh, there we go. So we do have a short either on this or possibly this chip or the other chip on the other side, the M92. I think what I'll do first is remove this chip and see if that removes our short. I'm going to use my hot air soldering station to heat up the chip and remove it, and then we'll recheck for a short. And it looks like our short is gone. So let's replace that video chip with the new one. And maybe if we're lucky, that'll fix it. Now, since I'm using a brand new chip to reinstall onto this board, I need to do what's called tinning the pads. And that's where I come in and put some flux on the chip itself. And then with my small soldering iron, I'm just going to put a little tiny bit of solder on each of these little pads, and then also a little dab of solder in the middle, and spread that all out with my large iron, and then it's ready to install onto the board. Now we've got our new video chip installed. Everything looks good. Let's check and make sure that short is still gone. So if we put both probes here, you hear the beep. That means we do have a short, which we would since they're both on the same pad. Now let's move it here and nothing, and here and nothing. Okay, let's flip it over and see if the short is gone on our M92 chip. And it is gone. Okay, so that's enough for me to get this reinstalled into the switch and see if that's all it took to fix it. Okay, now battery connector. Got a few more parts to put in, but this is enough to test it. Let's plug it in and see what happens. And here we go. Come on, give us something. Oh, still just zero power. Let's try it with a known good battery and see if that will get it working. When the battery is just at zero, sometimes that can cause a problem where it won't charge. So here is a new tester battery. There we go. Now let's see what happens. Come on. That's not giving us anything. Okay, we do have power on it. That's good news. Okay, so that's all good news. We just have to figure out why it's not charging, and I feel like maybe the charge port might have something to do with that. Oh, we got 5.1 volts coming in. Okay, so maybe we do need to replace this chip as well. Before we do that though, let's just unplug everything and make sure that chip is not shorted again. If it is, then we might have a different problem. Okay, let's see if there's a short. No short. Okay. So let's replace this and see if that'll get it working. We might even be able to just reposition this because it's so out of position that could be the only problem. I think I will just heat this thing up and get it installed on there correctly and just see if that's enough to get it working. Okay, good battery installed. I did try to just straighten the old M92 chip off camera. I forgot to film that part. I did try and straighten it. It didn't do any good, so now we have a new one installed. Let's see what happens. Come on. Oh, here we go. 1.43 amps. Okay. So, and the fan came on? Yeah, that's because it's really hot. Okay, let's try it with the old battery that has 0 volts in it and see if it'll charge that one up. There we go, 0.42 amps. That's normal charging for a battery that's dead. Let's get this off. Let's turn it around. See if we have a battery symbol or anything going on. We don't yet. It will show up at some point. We already know the screen works. We've got 0.41 amps. It's going to slow charge like that for quite a while, and then it should go to fast charging and charge this one up. So Nash, I think I won this challenge, but thank you for selling to me and sending it in. Let's move on to switch number 2 and see if we can fix another one. And switch number 2 just came in this container with, it looks like most of the parts and pieces we need. They even took out the metal mid-frame down here. I don't know what exactly is wrong with this one, but let's get all these pieces sorted and see if we can figure it out. The heat pipe is definitely bent up. Probably have to replace that one, but I don't want to do that until I know for sure if I can fix this one or not. Got some problems on the ribbon cable connector there for the screen. We'll probably have to replace that. Okay, so there's all the parts and pieces. I mean, mostly. Let's have a look at this board and see if we can figure out what's going on with it. So I don't see any problems with the board itself. It is possible that there's something here that I don't see, but I did notice that on this screen, we got a broken ribbon cable here and a broken ribbon cable here. So I think what we're gonna do with this one, I don't have any of these screens right now, but I'm thinking one of these other switches might need parts once we get into it. So I think what we'll do is we'll save this one to use for parts on some of the other switches. So let's move on to switch number 3 and see if we can fix switch number 3. Number 3 is gonna be a Nintendo Switch OLED edition. So for this OLED switch, the seller bought it from someone who tried to mod it and they failed. The seller said that there's a capacitor that's knocked off the board, but I feel like there's probably a few other things going on inside this. Now, I've only taken apart a couple of these OLED switches, so this is at least sort of all new to me as well. But once we get it all opened up, I feel like we're going to be able to see what's wrong right away. And so far, I don't actually really see too much going on here to be worried about. But I can't really see much of the board yet either. So I think that's where the real worry is down here on the board. Let's get this metal plate off and then we can see that. Okay, let's have a look at this board. And nothing too bad yet. I mean, that's good, I guess. Oh, we got something going on down here. Yeah, that's gonna be a problem. So we have some extra solder on down here. Looks like this cover's been removed. Oh boy, this could be bad. If they messed with the main chips on this or the memory, that could be a problem. Let's get this battery disconnected and then we can get down to the board. And we're also missing a speaker. That's interesting. Or the speaker cable? It might be under the board. Let's find out. I had all the screws in there so I could just hold it with this thing, or keep them all right where they need to be. Oh well. Oh boy, this doesn't look good. I am not convinced this one's going to be fixable. Get in there! Stupid screw. So the problem is they cut away the shield and then looks like they were trying to solder over here, but I think they were trying to solder with 0 flux because they're just big points of solder. Let's get this board all the way out though, so then we can check it a little further. Getting a little more worried about this the more we go. It looked pretty good initially, but this is not looking great. Okay, the board is out and the speaker cable was underneath the board. How does it look underneath? Somebody was definitely messing with this chip right here. I'm not sure what they were trying to do though. But let's remove this shield right here and see the damage, if there is any, to the main CPU. So when I bought this, I mean, the seller did say that somebody tried to mod it. Apparently I should have asked what exactly they were trying to mod. Okay, I don't know what they would be doing right here. Just not sure. Let's get this thing under a microscope and see if we can see exactly what they were trying to do. So here's a close-up of the part of the board where they were attempting to solder some stuff to. Not really sure why they needed to cut this away other than maybe so they could solder to this right here. So yeah, I'm not really sure what they were going for here. I think they were soldering with basically no flux. That's what it looks like because there's just big peaks and this solder just looks really dry. I wish I knew what they were going for. Let's check the other side. Right here. And same thing. This has been cut away like we already knew. And then it looks like they were trying to solder to this point right here. It's a bunch of... Oh, this looks kind of like flux, but judging by the soldering, they either used the wrong kind or not enough because the soldering just looks terrible. And then they put this solder mask over this right here. I don't know why they would do that, but they did. So I think what we need to do is come through and clean this up and make sure that capacitor is okay. It looks fine. But what we really need to find out is if there's any damaged components over here. The seller did say there was a capacitor that was missing, I think. I don't see any that are missing right here, but it definitely doesn't mean there isn't. So let's come clean this soldering mess up and then we can get a better look at what we have going on. And after cleaning this up and cleaning the other side up, I don't really see any problems, I don't think. unless there's something I'm missing somewhere. I'm going to give this board another check over, but I don't know. I'm kind of hopeful that that's all the issue was with this thing. Although, let's look. This looks... Is that solder right there? I don't think so. What is that? I think it's just flux, but I don't actually know. I can't tell. I think it's probably just flux. I'll probably look at that a little bit closer, but I think that might be all that's wrong with this one. So like I said, I'm going to look it over, and then assuming there's nothing else wrong, we'll start getting this thing put back together so we can test it. And found it! Here is the other problem. This capacitor needs to be cleaned up. These two are bridged. That may or may not be a big deal. But over here, we've got some major issues. I don't even know what was going on here, but I'm going to get my soldering iron in here and clean up this excess solder, clean this up, and then we can clean all this off and really see what we have going on here. So all these I think we got cleaned up okay all the way. This one I think is good, but we got to figure out what, if anything, goes here. I feel like maybe there is another capacitor that went from here to here, possibly. This one also cleaned up pretty good. So this must be the missing capacitor, but we have to figure out for sure if that's what goes here or if there's just nothing at all that goes here. It looks like this circuit trace right here comes in between those two and then returns back over here, which makes sense. So that means that this is all one plane right here, and this is probably ground. So I'm guessing that a capacitor goes from here to here, kind of like we have right over here. And I need to clean that one up as well. This one here was just totally bridged. There was solder all the way from here, all the way to there. So there's a possibility that this chip is even just totally fried, because this created a short on whatever this plane is right here, which looks like maybe one of the main power planes, because all of these are connected to the same one, which means there's a lot of capacitors on this one plane right here. So I don't know, all this work may not lead to this thing being fixed, but I think we gotta try. So let's get a capacitor placed on here. I'm not totally sure what size goes here, but I do have another chip that I can take it off of, so I'm just going to replace it with one from another chip. Now when I was working on cleaning this, I noticed this middle piece was loose. And that's because it has broken off from each end. There's usually a silver cap on this end and on this end, and that's what you solder to. This part right here, you can't solder anything to, so this capacitor is just totally done for. So we need to replace this one and this one. Okay, and not too bad. Those are attached on there nice and securely. So are all these. Solder looks good. Let's get this thing back installed into the case and see if it's going to turn on. I have a feeling once we install the perfect amount of thermal paste, this thing's going to work just fine. There we go. I'm going to use a replacement top plate for this because I have one. I need to clean it up first though. Once I get it cleaned up, then I'll put it on there, and that's going to go around this sharp piece right here. I tried to clip off that sharp piece as well as I could, but it's still pretty sharp, so just got to get most of this thermal paste off. Not going to be able to get it all, but I need to get most of it. There we go. I don't know for sure if this is going to fit on here. I hope it does. And hey, it actually does. Wow. Nintendo actually used a part that you can reuse from one model to the other. That's crazy. And you can see this came off of a parts board. So let's also get rid of that real quick, if we can. I'm going to have to let the IPA soak a little bit probably. It's getting it. Actually, I should leave this on here because this might be a parts board anyway. With all those capacitors that were shorted. I really hope it didn't short out this chip, but I don't know. It certainly could have. Plus, who knows what the mod they were trying to do? Who knows what that did to it? That alone could have caused some problems. So, okay, that's going to be good enough. We can clean that up more later if this actually works. This ribbon cable down here is almost destroyed. I'm hoping it's still going to work, but that does not look good down there. And that's because I think they damaged this connector right here. We got to take this back out so we can take a closer look at this connector and see if we can repair it. You can see right here on this ribbon cable is where it's been damaged by this pin, so hopefully that's something we can just bend and repair. And sorry, this is going to be a bit shaky, but in order to show you, I've got to set this thing up kind of strange. So this pin right here and this one right here have both been bent down from right up in this connector. So I've got to bend these things back up. I'm going to use this little pick, try and bend them back up. And unfortunately, I can't really show this on camera because I just can't get a good shot and still be not shaky. Oh, and then we got another pin over here. That one I think I can maybe show. Sort of. We got to bend it back and down. That's just so hard to get on camera. Okay, there we go. I got that one. So these ones we need to bend back up into their place up here, and hopefully without breaking them off. I'm going to do this part off camera. I'm going to use this pick and maybe like an X-Acto knife blade and try and bend these things back up here. Okay, and we got those reseated, so I think that's going to work just fine now. So let's get this back into the case and get this ribbon cable in and see if we can get it in without bending those things up more. Okay, now the other thing I want to do is straighten out this ribbon cable. It's hard to see, but it's actually bent a little bit right there. So I want to kind of, actually I think I mostly got it. I want to try and re-bend that part so it doesn't just push on that pin again. So here we go. I'm going to push in very carefully. Oh, did we get it? I think maybe. Oh, I think we got it. Yes. Okay. Now, I'm assuming this ribbon cable's good. It's pretty banged up down here, so I'm not sure that that's even good, but hopefully it is. We just got that part installed. Now I got to get the rest of the ribbon cables and the screws in, and then we can finally test this thing out. Okay, metal plate on. Wi-Fi cables plugged in. Now, oh, this cable is, I think we're also missing some screws in here, but I don't have any extras, so I think we're just going to put it back together and hope for the best. Okay, now all the shell screws. Then we'll be able to test this thing out. I really hope this works. That took so long. And now all the screws are in. Let's plug this thing in and see what happens. Okay, here we go. 0 amps. Oh, 0.35. Good. 0.4. Oh, we got a screen and charging. Come on. Is it going to start up though? Turned off. Ah, there we go. So this Nintendo Switch is working. I can't believe we actually got it working. That took so long, but I love seeing it start up after all that work. Let's move on to Switch number 4. This Nintendo Switch I bought from a viewer named Steve. He bought it from a rent-to-own store. He paid over $700 in total. So kids, remember, don't buy from rent-to-own stores. Soon after it was paid off, it stopped charging, so he took it to a repair shop who said it was not fixable. But we'll be the judge of that. All right, and here we go. It looks like this Switch has seen some stuff. First, let's plug it in and see what the amp meter shows. Okay, and we do just have 0 amps charging. So let's get it apart, figure out what's going on. Okay, so far it looks like we don't have any missing screws. That's always nice. But we need to get under this metal plate, see what's really going on the board. And this actually looks really clean inside. Let's test these capacitors and see what we got going on after we disconnect this battery. Before we do that, let's see how much charge is in the battery, just out of curiosity. We have a fully discharged battery. Okay, let's check this capacitor right here. That capacitor is not shorted. Interesting. This capacitor is shorted, which leads me to believe we might have a problem on this chip right here. And I don't see any other problems other than this capacitor being shorted. So I think the next thing we need to do is just replace this chip, and let's see if that alone fixes it. The nice thing about this chip is we don't actually have to remove anything else on the board. We just need to remove that little chip right there and replace it, and then we can just test it after that. And after all that talking about how I can do it all in the case, I have actually melted this bottom plastic before. So I think in order to avoid melting anything like that, I'm just gonna remove this board. It doesn't take very long to do, so I'm gonna remove the board, and then we can get to that chip and replace it much easier. And with that replaced, let's see if we still have a short. Oh, we do. That's a bummer, but you know what? I just noticed this board has this MOSFET right here, and on the other side, I believe it's this one, is known to go bad on these, so I should have thought of that first, but I'm going to replace this and see if that will get that short to go away. I don't know what I was thinking. I guess it's just been a while since I've done these. I need to protect this LED though, so we'll use some tape on here. One of the problems with using this yellow capped on tape is the surfaces have to be nice and clean, and as soon as some flux runs under them, then they just immediately unstick. So it's not always the best choice for protecting these things, but it usually is enough to get the job done. So that's what I'm going for here. And with that replaced, same problem. So let's dig a little bit deeper. This is where I was hoping this wouldn't go, but let's check these capacitors here and over here and see if those are shorted. If they are, that is very bad news. Let's start down here. No problems here. Good. Yeah, that's not good. So unfortunately, this board looks to be actually shorted on the CPU, which means this one's not going to be fixable, but we do have that other one that we saved to use for parts. I haven't actually used it for parts, so I'm thinking let's remove this board, put that board in this switch, since this one probably has a good screen, and let's see if we can fix it with that one. So here we go. This is what we're looking for. I don't know for sure that this is a good board, but I do know that it doesn't have any shorts, at least anywhere that I saw. So I think it might be. So let's use this one in place of the bad one and see if we can get this switch working still. Okay, and here we go. We'll just install this one in place of that other one. I hope this works. That would be nice to get another one of these fixed. It's such a bummer when the CPUs on these things short out, because there's just not a good way of fixing them, especially at a decent, especially economically, because that's just, some of them can be fixed if you reball the CPU, but I mean, a lot of times that's just honestly not worth it, because I mean, unless it's something that you're wanting to do for yourself or practice, but as far as a business perspective, it just takes so long and you're not guaranteed success, so it's just hard to make that work. Okay, so we just need to get this fan up so this will slip down in there. Then we can hook it all up and test it out and see if it works. So I've got the new battery installed. Let's see what happens when we try and turn it on. No, we got a blue screen. This means usually the CPU or the eMMC needs to be reballed. That's not something I do here just because a lot of times it's just not worth it. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to call this one non-fixable. We've fixed 2 and 2 of them are non-fixable. We've got 1 more to go. Let's see if we can fix that one. And number 5 is this Fortnite Special Edition from a viewer named Nate. He said that the SD card reader was broken. If that's all it is, we should be able to fix that. But let's get it open and find out. Okay, and this is in pretty good condition. A little bit of a scratch there, but really not too bad. The back's kind of scratched up, a little bit kind of scuffed up, but also really not that bad. Let's open this up and see that SD card reader slot, see if we can see anything. Yeah, we can't see anything from here. So I'm gonna get this back cover off and the metal plate, and then we'll take a look at that. Okay, everything looks good so far. Now let's take a look at this card reader. Okay, and as far as I can tell, it actually seems fine. It felt like maybe it wasn't plugged in all the way though. These can be really tricky to get plugged in all the way. What I'm gonna try is just plugging this in again, making sure it's in there all the way. And then we'll start it up, assuming it will start up, and see if that's all it took to fix it. Okay, that's in there all the way. Now we'll get the screw back in. Make sure it's on here correctly. Okay, there we go. We'll save this. We'll put that on a little bit, assuming that actually worked. Okay, will it start up? Okay, it will. Now I just need to get an SD card so we can plug it in there and see if that'll work. Okay, here we go. Let's see what happens when we plug an SD card in. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. So this means that the SD card reader is working just fine. So it seems like the only problem with this Nintendo Switch is that the SD card reader was not plugged in all the way. That was a super easy fix, but I'm glad to have it after some that were pretty difficult. So we were able to fix 3 out of 5 Nintendo Switches today. Obviously, I would have loved to fix all 5, but 3 out of 5 ain't bad. If you like this video, you might like the video where I bought 23 broken Nintendo Switches to see if I could fix them. I'll put a link on your screen now so you can come hang out with me over there and see if I can fix them. Thank you for watching it, and I hope you have a good one.